Meeting on the crossroads where the two forbidden subjects of religion and politics intersect. This is the Sophie Scholl Roundtable, where we discuss matters in the news, matters in the government, matters that relate to politics. With me today, I'm so glad to have him back, is Norm Carlson. Norm, welcome.
Thank you, Mel.
Now, we all know what took place with the Supreme Court regarding the overturning of Roe v. Wade through their Dobbs decision. And much discussion has been over people being pro-life. Because when people say pro-life, they automatically assume that they are anti-abortion. But then they'll say, well, if you're pro-life, why aren't you for the child after they're born? Why aren't you for the person on the verge of death? Why aren't you taking care of them after they've been in the womb? I have Norm here today to talk about the way in which we use language to define ourselves or define a movement. And Norm is one of the few, if not the only person I know who tends not to use the term everybody else does. So as I'm hearing this pro-life phrase be used again and again, I just wanted to get Norm's feedback today. Norm, when it comes to pro-life, do you use the term?
No, I never do. There are a lot of modern slang terms and neologisms that I refuse to use.
And pro-life is one you refuse?
Pro-life is one.
Why do you refuse to use it?
Well, for one thing, it's a weaselly advertising propaganda word. It's a reaction to the term pro-choice, which was itself something that sounds, and no doubt was, were straight out of some advertising agency. Some professionals with words and influencing people came up with it. Well, I like the good old honest, look, when I was 10 years old, I bought the unabridged dictionary, the good one, the Merriam-Webster, with my own money and started reading it. Some of the best money I ever spent, and half I know I learned out of that thing. I have a respect for words. I have a respect for their meanings, literal and figurative, denotative and connotative. And I don't like neologisms and slang. I'm a fifth generation slang hater.
So what is it that you prefer to use? Because you're not saying that as you don't use the term that you're for abortion.
No, I have filled out questionnaires this way and crossed it right out and said I'm anti-abortion.
And what do you use that term in specific?
That means that I oppose the killing of unborn babies for convenience, frankly.
Yeah. To me, that gets more to the heart of the matter than the term pro-life does.
Well, sure. That pro-life was deliberately coined to be somewhat ambiguous.
And that's a problem I feel today. We often use terms that are ambiguous and vague, and there needs to be more specificity to words so that people have the terms clarified and there's no doubt as to what a person means.
More people should read dictionaries.
Yes, more people should read dictionaries, exactly.
Well, people don't think things through, and we live in a very confusing world. Abortion, let's take carcinogenic. Now there's a word, you'd think that was a lot less moral charge on that, but there's a medical meaning, there's a dictionary meaning, there's a legal meaning. Just because you see something that's listed as carcinogen, this is known by the state of California to cause cancer. Well, that's funny. Scientists and doctors can't even know for sure whether some of these things, but the state of California knows. It's a legal definition. And you're dealing with legal terms, you're dealing with semantic questions. And you need to be able to think through these things and delineate which of these your opponent or yourself, and clear your own thinking on this. People don't think things through.
I would agree. And, as I've been thinking about this whole debate, I go back to pre-Civil War days when you had those who were of the abolition mindset.
Well, let's stay right before we wander up to abortion. The recent Supreme Court decision was a legal matter. We're talking about whether a certain law or practice is against the Constitution or not. It is not about whether abortion is good or bad, or when it's good and bad. It's not about what justifies it and what doesn't. It's not about the consequences. It's not about who takes care of the babies when they are born or when they aren't born. It is a question of, is it constitutionally correct to say that the federal government mandates that abortions are permissible in all of the states? That's the question that was at issue. And I think that the original Roe versus Wade was patently wrongly decided, and I think this is a corrective measure.
Yeah, I think it's a corrective one as well, because we don't see the term abortion in the Constitution.
The justification for it was blatantly strained, and it really had no logical structure to it. It was an excuse.
Yes.
I mean, the decision was not on constitutional basis. It was on the basis of opinion or what the judges thought was moral, and the written decision was an excuse and poorly phrased.
Yeah, and using the Constitution to try to justify it, like the right to privacy from the, Fourth Amendment?
Well, wasn't even that. It was whether it was the federal government's jurisdiction.
That's true, too. Right.
And that's all that's at issue here.
Right.
And everything else is just people using it as an excuse to push their agendas on both sides.
And that's what the Constitution was not intended for. I think of this whole discussion, like we've said, about using phrases pro-life versus anti-abortion. And I know people will say it doesn't sound as good. It doesn't sound as effective. It doesn't sound as persuasive. But I, again, go back to what you have to say regarding putting a finer point on the definition of words. And anti-abortion is much more easy to define than pro-life.
Well, it's a lot more honest.
Yeah, it's more honest. Thank you. Thank you. It would be like, as going before, slavery. I never heard of slavery or people being opposed to slavery calling it the pro-freedom movement. Weren't they abolitionists?
Yes.
Weren't they anti-slavery?
Yes.
I didn't hear a lot.
Today there seems to be a welter of new taboos and prohibitions and mandates and requirements on all the niceties of just however you say anything. You have to, it's terrible to say, just horrible to say colored people. It's mandated you say people of color. What a pompous affectation. This is just the bully making you say uncle.
Yeah, right.
And you're not supposed to say slave. You're supposed to say enslaved people. I can't keep up with all this. And you see that these people are so pure.
Yes.
And so specialized. They're the Pharisees of today. They are so pure. They have so many rules that they follow. And all they do all day long, the Pharisees' prayer in the Gospel of Matthew, thank God I'm not a sinner like you other men. That's all I hear from the liberals.
Yeah, I would love to I'm almost too afraid to try it. But like you say, you can say people of color, but you can't say colored people. Who makes right?
And why don't people say hell no? They did it with the vaccination. Why didn't they do it with, of all the stupid places to draw the line, where we're going to get sick and die? Obviously, I'm not an anti-vaxxer. Yeah. No, they didn't draw it there. They drew it at... I'm afraid I'm getting more and more sour about the human race as I get older, and that's not easy to do.
But I hope as you're listening to this, you're really thinking about how we use terms. And I want to be one who shies away from using pro-life. I want to be saying anti-abortion more and more so people know what I mean.
When you use their language, you're playing their game, and it's rigged.
Yeah, it's rigged. And how would you say it's rigged?
Well, let me count the ways.
Okay.
I mean, the terminology is one.
Yeah.
That's my point. They have set up that terminology to rig it in their favor.
Yeah. I would agree.
And when they say pro-choice, that's their propaganda term. Mm-hmm. And when you say pro-life, you're just imitating them. You're playing catch up. You're playing second fiddle. You're trying to play their game by their rules.
It would be interesting to see which came first, pro-choice or pro-life.
Well, I'm not a betting man. I'm not a gambling man, but I bet on a sure thing, and I'll put money on that.
Yeah. What do you do? I mean,
I remember, Mel, don't you?
Yeah. I was, what?
See, that's the thing. People hear these new terms, and they suck them right up and start spitting them out. And I don't. I say, hell no, I'm not going to use your new term, your new language,
That's good, and I think we need to take such stands as that. I'm just wondering, how do we respond?
Well, you have to be a real antisocial curmudgeon. It's natural for people to do that, but it isn't for me, and people don't like that. Too bad.
That's what I like about Norm. Oh, because Norm would say sometimes, if I remember right, you would just raise your hand and say no.
In high school, I was always the guy that raised my hand no, and the one, and people would say, well, what do you do that for? You have no chance. Well, I said, because I was against it. well, yeah, but people won't like you. Well, too bad. I'm right.
We need more of that. Oh. Well, Norm, lastly, before we go on to the next subject for the next show, I hear people say, and you've heard me say it already, well, you're not pro-life if you don't take care of kids after they're born, if you don't do this for them or don't do that for them. What do you think, or how would you respond to that when people say that?
2 words, both in Latin, non sequitur.
Doesn't follow.
Right.
Doesn't follow. And how would you expound upon that?
Well, I could put it in English in 2 words too, but they'd be vulgar.
Oh, okay.
Well, I mean, it has no necessary connection. If you're against cruelty to animals, you have to have an animal. I'm against cruelty to animals, and I don't have a pet. Well, shouldn't I have an opinion?
Yeah. And sometimes like when you say the non sequitur, that's a great way to put it, because I'm saying with anti-abortion, we're saying that individual should have the right to life.
They're 2 independent questions.
Right.
And besides, it isn't even true. The conservative and Christian communities do a great deal to help with children that are unwanted or badly cared for.
Yeah.
And so on. They're more generous than the secular liberals.
Agree. Right.
So it's both false and irrelevant. You don't need anything more to win the argument.
And I think we'll leave it there on this edition of the Sophie Scholl Roundtable. Hope you can join us next week.